What's this? A letter for me.
Welcome back to another episode of Through the Mail Thursdays. This is Remember the Great Sports. Today I am going to go through 3 envelopes that I got back through the mail. So let's just jump right into this. And the first one is postmarked from Tampa, Florida. And I believe I know who this is. It is a former New York Yankee legend. And it is indeed Mr. Hector Lopez. And I will pull him out and show you what he signed. He signed 1, 2, 3, and 4. Move that one up a little bit so we can see it better. So 4 items signed by Mr. Lopez. I'll move it over because there's a little bit of glare in that lamp. So if you don't know who Hector Lopez is, all of these cards feature him as a Yankee, but he originally came up with the Kansas City Athletics, if I'm not mistaken, which are now the modern day Oakland Athletics. And Mr. Lopez is actually born in Panama. He played for the Kansas City A's for 5 years before going to the New York Yankees, and I'm not sure how, if there was a trade or I wasn't around back then. Here we go, transactions, and traded in 1959 with Ralph Terry. Okay, I did not know that. So he and Ralph Terry, who also is an all-time great Yankee, were traded to the Yankees from the Kansas City A's for Johnny Cucks, Jerry Lumpy, and Tom Sturdivant in 1959. Mr. Lopez played through the 1966 season with the Yankees, and at 36 years old, he was retired after that 66 season. He was on 2 World Series championship teams with the Yankees. He is currently retired, living in Florida, and enjoying, I guess, life every day, minus hurricane season, I guess. But thank you very much, Mr. Lopez. Very happy to add your signatures to the collection, and we will move on to the next envelope. Okay. And this next one has... okay. This is not to be confused with the other person with his name, but this is former player manager Joe Morgan on 4 1980s, 90s junk wax era cards. And Mr. Morgan was the manager of the Boston Red Sox. Get that blurriness out of there a little bit. Sorry about that. Morgan also played briefly. He was more known for being the manager than he was a player, unlike his counterpart with the same name. Morgan played 13 seasons total in the minors, and off and on had major league experience. He played for the Milwaukee Braves, the Kansas City A's, the Philadelphia Phillies, the Cleveland Indians, and the St. Louis Cardinals. But he is more known for being the manager of the Red Sox in the late 80s, early 90s. After John McNamara was fired by the Red Sox, Mr. Morgan, who was, I believe, on his coaching staff. Yes, Morgan was on his coaching staff, John McNamara's, and after McNamara was let go, he moved into the position, as the Red Sox manager, and he was the manager of the Red Sox from 1988 to 1991. So this would probably be his last card as a manager. But Mr. Morgan is also a Boston Red Sox Hall of Famer, not a Major League Baseball Hall of Famer. The other Joe Morgan is that. But this Joe Morgan is a Red Sox Hall of Famer, and he's often confused with the other Joe Morgan, who is the former second baseman Hall of Famer of the Big Red Machine. So if you have any cards from this era, 1989, 89, 90, and 91 tops, Mr. Morgan's in that set. I definitely recommend maybe throwing a few in the mail to him and asking him to sign if you have any laying around. Especially if you're a big Red Sox fan. This is a Boston Red Sox Hall of Famer. So thank you very much, Mr. Morgan. I appreciate that, and we will move on to the next envelope. Sign likes moving around on me. Alright, this next one is another baseball success, I believe, and yes it is, and it is autograph from Mr. Darrell Evans on 1, 2, 3, and 4. Mr. Evans is a longtime major leaguer. Let me get his exact numbers up here. I believe he played over 20 years in the majors, if I'm not mistaken. 21 years he spent in the major leagues. He is probably, there's two ways you can look at this. He was a Giant, he was a Tiger, and he was a Brave, and that's the last year that he played as a Brave. But he came up with the Braves in 1969 and wasn't a regular until about 1971. But in 1973, the Atlanta Braves actually featured 3 players that hit over 40 home runs for that team. And Mr. Evans was on that team with none other than Hammerin' Hank Aaron himself. Hank Aaron, Darrell Evans, and Davey Johnson all in 1973 hit over 40 home runs for the Atlanta Braves. Evans was only 26 years old at the time, and little did we know he would last, play until he was 42 years old. I mean, that tells you the longevity, the ability that this guy had. Now, a couple positive things and maybe one negative thing about Mr. Evans. Mr. Evans has, for his career, over 400 home runs. And he very rarely is even considered for the Hall of Fame. Yes, he has over 414 home runs for his career. Well, he doesn't have over. He has 414 career home runs. And the downside to his ability as a hitter, as a home run threat, is he only has a lifetime 248 batting average. He has over 2,000 hits. He's got 2,223 career hits. But spanning a decade of 21 years, that's a lot of hits, and you're going to get a lot of hits that way. But technically, his first 2 seasons, he only played in 12 games, his first 2 seasons. So really, he had a 19-year career, if you want to get down to it. One cool thing about Mr. Evans is he still is involved in baseball. I don't think he manages anymore, but post-playing career, he coached a lot in the independent leagues. He also coached in affiliated ball, here and there. He basically retired from that part of the game, I believe, a few years ago. I want to say in like 2010-ish, somewhere in there. And he is currently retired, and I believe he does a little consulting work, for, companies regarding baseball, because obviously he's, somebody that knows a little bit about baseball after playing 21 years in the majors. So, Evans was a good power hitting, hitter. Kind of never was, the top guy on the team. I believe he only made like 2 all-star teams his entire career. But he was part of the championship, Detroit Tigers when they won the World Series. And I think that's the only championship that he won. as a player when he was with the Tigers. So if you're a Giants fan, if you're a Tigers fan, or if you're a Atlanta Braves fan, this is somebody that almost definitely needs to be in your collection. So I thank you very much for checking these out. Thank you, Mr. Evans, for signing. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. And, of course, thank you, Mr. Lopez. Mr. Lopez is, I believe, reaching almost 90 years old. So if you have some Yankees or Kansas City A's cards of Mr. Lopez lying around, I highly recommend that you get those in the mail to him, because he may not be able to sign, here in the near future. So thank you for everyone. I wish you all the best of luck and best of health, and thanks for checking out another Through the Mail Thursday video. Stay tuned for the next one. Thanks.